All right, so let's talk a little bit about, so the endocannabinoid system is super important. It's our master regulatory system. So what does that mean? Well, it means that you are a regulated thing, right? And how does that regulation work? Well, it certainly works at a, let's say, a micro level, in cells, and that's explainable and easy to understand, but it also works at kind of a macro level, right? So good examples of this, and we kind of work with the sun, and we also work with the endocannabinoid system. If you want the science behind this, you can look at clock, and you can look at WNT and how WNT is manipulated, let's say, by the endocannabinoid system, by CB1 receptors, and also by ion channels. So if you really want to dive deep, there's a lot to dive deep here. But let's just say the endocannabinoid system regulates organs and regulates organs to the point of, let's say, in our stomach, now is a good time to eat. In our liver, now is a time to repair. In our heart, now is a time to repair. And it turns out that you're working on your heart between about 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. every day. If you eat lunch, guess what happens? You don't work on your heart anymore. You work on your lunch. You start working on your liver about 7 o'clock at night. And so this is why people say, yeah, it's better, eat all your food before 7 o'clock, right? Because these things happen. And endocannabinoid system is involved in that, but that's kind of a bigger picture thing that how our bodies sync, let's say, with the sun and circadian rhythm. Inside of that, now, if you look at like your stomach and how the endocannabinoid system would regulate your stomach for now is a good time to eat, what happens every day and it's about 10 a.m. and about 3 p.m. is you'll begin to express CB1 neuroreceptors in the gut. And we kind of feel this, and this is what most of us think of as hunger. And it's really, you can go 40 days without eating, right? So but your body just twice a day normally goes through these processes where now would be a good time to eat. But that's all endocannabinoid. That's all endocannabinoid driven, endocannabinoid managed, all works through CB1 neuroreceptors. And in fact, one of the interesting things about the endocannabinoid system is that if it is the, master regulatory system, like many of us argue it is, then it would have to have the ability to control not just every cell, but organelles within cells. So the endocannabinoid system would absolutely have to control, let's say, mitochondria in energy status. How can it control and regulate energy status in you if it can't control and regulate energy status in a mitochondria? And so it turns out a recent development is they've found CB1 receptors on the outer membranes of mitochondria. So even these little organelles inside of cells have an endocannabinoid system expressed. Endoplasmic reticulums have CB1 neuroreceptors and would have to, because again, you're switching how you're folding proteins and that type thing. Even your perioxome has CB1 receptors. Why? Again, you beta oxidize there. And so it's important that your body is synced up, let's say, on whether you're burning fat or sugar and the energy statuses in your body. So every cell inside of every cell even responds to endocannabinoid signaling and endocannabinoid, let's say, mechanizations, which is really cool. So as you understand this system, again, it's a way to, you can do anything really with a cell through the endocannabinoid system. So let's talk a little bit about marijuana real quick, just at the end here. And we'll always, again, almost every talk, I talk about the endocannabinoid system. If I'm talking about the immune system, I'm going to be talking about how the endocannabinoid system interfaces with it. If I'm talking about autism, I'll be talking about the issues and problems that are seen in the endocannabinoid system. Autistic people have too little circulating endocannabinoids, which means that they don't have the engineering surface that you and I do. So it makes sense that they kind of are the way that they are. Obese people have too many circulating endocannabinoids, which means that they've lost communication. They've lost signaling. They've lost tone with their body. Easy things to fix, but you have to understand the body, the processes, and kind of where to go in nature to fix them. So let's talk about the master screwdriver for a second. So I speak and teach on the endocannabinoid system all the time. When I do, I have to spend about 5 minutes usually dialing people back from marijuana, because that's where everybody leaps to when we talk about the endocannabinoid system. So don't do that, first of all. And second of all, let me give you some information about kind of the differences. So the endocannabinoid system, your dog has, and a bird has, and your fish has, and your lizard has, and it's driven by dietary fats, okay? But cannabis, at least in humans and mammals, is a good way to get in the middle of that system like a master screwdriver. So as I mentioned, something like CBDA has action at COX enzymes and will help with pain relief, will help with inflammation control. THC, while that's the thing that everybody seems to get wrapped around the axle about psychoactivity, THCA in its acidic form, which is non-psychoactive, has all kinds of different properties. It mimics something called the anandamide, which is our main control guy in the endocannabinoid system. So just giving you more control surface and more control, let's say, ways to manipulate that control surface is going to result in a better system, is going to result in a finer, more detailed way to better control your body, right? And so THC can and does augment anandamide and gives you more control. THC is psychoactive though, and that's very uncomfortable for a lot of people. We suggest THC really for people who have depression, who can't sleep, so it's got some good uses, but it's certainly not for everything. And there's no need to. There's so many things within the cannabis plant. So the cannabis plant will produce cannabinoids, which again, directly impact the endocannabinoid system in broad ways and also in fine ways. The other thing that the cannabis plant produces that's really beneficial are terpenes. And terpenes are a way that a plant builds its immune system. So if a plant's trying to defend itself against staph or strep, it's going to build a certain terpene profile to do that. And it turns out that those terpene profiles, as long as they're safe, also do the same thing in us. Okay, so there are terpene profiles that will help fight pathogenic infections and all manner of things. But again, we're learning that from the cannabis plant. So in the future, I really don't know what's going to happen with cannabis policy, but we certainly need, let's say every one of us needs access to hemp or cannabis in some way. Whether you choose to, let's say, exercise that access or not is kind of up to you and your personal values. But it's just such a medicinal tool that, it's very beneficial, let's say, for us all to have access to it.